Kenny WILLBOND came to California in 1953. One of the 11 children. I'm the point person. 5 younger and 5 older.
My name is Tommy Muhammad. Tommy, parentheses, where Muhammad. Came to California December of 1956, 57. Came to California in Central Valley because it was work out here. There's gold out there in that fields. Onion fields, carrot field, grape field, peach field, apricot. You could work, make a living. I came from Arizona, a desert state. We definitely pick cotton and chop cotton there. So coming to California was the most wonderful experience as a child that I could think of, because we worked hard in 110 and 105 degrees every day in Arizona. Coming to California, there was always a breeze, and it was food to eat.
I want to respond to what Tommy said. Said it was always work out here. I did that too. To Ralph White's credit, or to my dismay, Ralph White made more money transporting folks to the field than folks working the field. I'm listening. God don't like it. I ain't gonna lie. Ralph White had an old 1948 Plymouth.
That's it.
3 folks in the back seat and 3 in the front. Not because 2 in the driver. And he's charging us $1 to get there, $1 to get there, $1 to get back. Now you can work all day out in Linden and make $5. Now Ralph White, to his credit, worked hard. Where we were making $4 and $5, he was making 9 and 10. Worker. Plus what he ripped us off for. So he's making 9 or 10 plus 4 or 5. So Ralph White was making in big dough back in the day. And I'll swear to that.
My name is Reverend Booker Guyden, and like the WILLBONDs and the Wares, we were a large family. And we came to California in 55 because my maternal grandmother and my aunt were here. And my daddy liked to keep my mama happy. So my mama wanted to be where her sister and her mother were. And so in 55, we migrated here and were introduced to onions, tomatoes, carrots, etc. And the earliest I remember Ralph, he was a merchant. And but he just had a store in his automobile. And he progressed as a merchant.
Thanks for telling everything. See, what Wilton didn't tell you that I was getting halfway back to Stockton. I collect my money. I didn't bring them all the way in until I got my money. Then I would bring them over to Stockton. But I worked in every field, apricots. I can tell you how it starts off, in the summertime, you start off with cherries. And then you go from cherries to onions. And then you go from topping onions, windrow onions, and then topping onions. Windrow onions when you pull them from the ground and lay them down on top of you. The top ones when you cut them up, take the. And I used to, I never sold anything. I didn't do no stealing. I just would move some sacks over every now and then. And we all would, so don't think I would steal. We all moved sacks over. And we 25 cents. I did 25 cents a bucket, that 2 big buckets in the sack. So all of us worked in the onion fields and as he said a few minutes ago, tomatoes, tomatoes, and we picked peaches, picked apricots, and we also thrashed walnuts, thrashed almonds. I mean, you named it. All of us up here did something. Now, Ware did not say how many people was in his family, but it was a whole lot. And Booker didn't say how many was in his family, but it was a whole lot. WILLBOND did say, you understand, mine was kind of mediocre. I didn't have a big family when I come to California. Not that I have one now, but as you progress, you increase a little bit in family size. But we would all be in the field. Everybody, the biggest one I think at that time might have been the Ware family. I mean, it's a whole lot of them. Even back then, at the time, I'm picking thing. I picked cotton in Texas too. You name it, I picked cotton from 13. I was 13 when I started picking cotton. Prior to that, I was a caddy golf club, like for people's like Taggarwood and all that. There was no black people's on white people's blacks could play on Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday was ladies' day, so blacks couldn't play. And that was only caddies could play. Not any one of us could play on golf course.
Okay, well, when I was working the streets, I was a patrolman.
Okay.
And I'll digress for a second. I'd go handle a call, a crowd would be together. Guess who would show up? Raising Cane. I want to know what's going on here. And I said, Rap, give me a couple minutes. No. And now he's playing to the audience. The Rap White drumming votes. Let me repeat. Ralph White is drumming up votes. And so I let Ralph White run, carry on. Or he's going to do it anyway. So I was going to be in compliance with it. So I did agree with it. Okay, Ralph, do what you got to do for a minute or two. I got to get this thing resolved. So he'd do his to us, all right, now you handle this and get back in later on. So I understood that. So, and of course, Ralph being there and incensing people, but on the same token, quieting them down, because when Ralph White's raising Cane, they want to watch the cane Ralph was raising. When Ralph White comes down and said, give his march orders, you handle this. That's what they wanted to hear. That's what he did. So I did that. And then, the first lieutenant's test I took, you have four from patrolman. Okay, I made sergeant. So now I'm supervising 30 guys at any one time. Okay. And we had a good relationship with the guys. Some of the guys played games, but I handled them with dispatch. No problem there. So I like working the streets. And so, but I was bent on being self-sufficient. And I computed that if I make rank, the city will buy me a new home. Because you figure a house thing costs something like $1,000, whatever, you pay the first down. So the increase in salary you get will make a house note. So I was studying for the money so much, but I realized the money would buy you a house. So if you make lieutenant, they can buy you a house. You make captain, they'll buy you a bigger house. That's what it boils down to. And that was my motivation. So, but I had some struggles. They played some games with me. I won't get into it, but I'll tell you off camera in person if you want to hear it. But they soon found out that I wasn't. I'll tell you. No, I'm gonna let that ride. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this one, and this is the easy one. The one of the favorite jobs on the department was being a cameraman. If you go around and take pictures of accidents, homicide scenes, we had to go to a school called Bonfair School, and the Bonfair School was held up in Las Vegas, in Lake Tahoe. It was a 4-day school. And so I was out performing guys who were going to Bonfair. I said, hey, I told the guy who was making the sign, I said, I'd go to Bonfair School. Well, we'll get you there. But I never got there. And this goes on for like 80 years. So they announced they're going to be giving a sergeant's test. It's going to be July the 2nd through July the 6th. So you're going to be out of town for 4 days. Just so happened, on those 4 days, they were giving the sergeant's test. So I saw through. They're going to ship me out of town so I won't be around to compete. I thought it was perfect. I said, I don't want to go. Well, you've been bragging, you've been complaining you want to go. Now you're going to go. We're going to send you. I said, you can send me, but you can't make me stay. If that test gets on the 5th, I'll be in town the night of the 4th, and I'll be at the test site the day of the 5th, and I'll leave town in the evening when the test is over. Made sergeant. And that's one of the easy ones. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I've been in so many things. When I first got involved in the civil rights movement, we didn't have no bus drivers, no black bus drivers. So I protested that and was able to catch, at that time, you know, everybody do a little bit wrong on the job. So the supervisor, the superintendent at that time got caught. Well, matter of fact, I caught him buying motors for other people's cars, and they're working on them at the yard, and I got him busted. And then end up now, if you see black bus drivers, we didn't have any, not one. Washington was the first one they hired. And Washington was one of the first black police they hired. And Ted Weaver was the second one. Jennings was the third one. Mr. WILLBOND here was the fourth one. But and I loved the hell out of him because I remember when he came on the force, when I was on the city council, well, and just as I was getting ready to leave, every time what they would used to do is they would keep a line of people to be sergeants. And just before one of the blacks come up to be sergeant, they'll cut they want nobody to retire. 4 or 5 people up, 10 people up for retire, and they wait until the list go down and drop off, which they have to come up with another list, like Eddie Brown and all of them. Took a long time to get that, so I had to go in and make that change. Same thing with, he was a captain at the time, but Captain WILLBOND was the smartest, educational-wise policeman we had. All right, he went and picked up his degree and everything. All others had GEDs and all that, and they become police chief. And it was one that would flunk almost everything, and WILLBOND, and they made him chief. Well, since they made him chief, at that time we'd moved it to 3 deputy chiefs. And so they made him chief, and he appointed 3 deputy chiefs, and like everything else, WILLBOND was passed over, and he was messy. So I raised a lot of hell to get WILLBOND put in the right position. And I made him open up and make a full deputy chief, and he became the first black deputy chief. So he's the highest ranking. I'm not going to tell you he gets $20,000 a year, $20,000 a month retirement, because that's not my business to tell y'all that. But that was me who made it possible. But I was the one that made that possible.
I remember it well, and I raised Cain about that. And it got rocky down the road, but I knew where the bodies were buried, so it worked out well. Thank you, Ralph.
And could have became chief later on, but you know, some of us don't work it right. And you can't get them to do what I was doing behind the scene, make the city manager do what's supposed to be. I fired the city manager because they didn't want to make me chief. But, you know, I have a record of doing different things for civil rights. Civil rights in Stockton was my name. As I said, we didn't have no blacks on the police department. We only had 3 and had no blacks on the fire department. And I made them hire blacks for the fire department. Downtown, no blacks, hardly working Safeway, all of them. I made that possible and all that through putting on pickets and boycotting. Stockton record, no blacks working, no black reporters in that thing. So we organized a boycott of the Stockton record and had people to stop taking the Stockton record. You name it, my name is on some of everything that you can think of for the civil rights in Stockton. And I don't know why we have to have civil rights. Why can't we just have our own constitutional rights and equal rights? And anytime a black person moves to something equal or try to make it equal rights, it becomes civil rights. You understand? It's better than being black rights. But like now, Black Lives Matter, you're ready to throw that in. That's the best thing anything can happen to us right now. But anyway, as policeman, I had more blacks on the police department when I became a councilman than we ever had. Had all black firemen that I got, every one of them. And at that time, the tricks that was being played on them, they would all the blacks, when you get in line to be a fireman, they had all the tests, white boys and things, they had all the tests. And some of the white women, they had the test because their dad, his grandfather, uncle, all of them was on the police force. So they would pass all the tests and blacks would get wiped out. So what I did is I got Irvine, who was a fireman. I had him, I made the city point him to go and get some blacks and take them to San Jose, over to Vallejo, all the cities that the police department would use to get raised. When they want to raise, San Jose, they ain't talking about how much the income over there, but San Jose, over in Vallejo and different places, they use those to get their raise up right, all right? So what I did is I had all of them to go around. Now watch this, and you would call it a real good trick. I had them to go around our Irvine to take them to those different places to take tests. So now black people is familiar with the testing that's coming up. At that time, I picked 9 blacks, 3 Mexicans, and 2 Filipinos to go around. They all went around. They all went around taking the test. So when they go around and take the test, they know the test. Now it comes time for Stockton to take a test for the fire department. So I convinced my colleagues, hey, let's stop using that old test because we're getting all these people. Remember that? So, and this is like about a month before they take the test, they come up. So these people didn't have the new test. They didn't know nothing about the test. And that's how we got all the blacks to take the test, and they passed. And then from then on, you know, monkey see, monkey do. And so black folks see something, they're going to move on. Same thing with the fire department. When I left the council, we had almost 18 firemen. We have none now, 1. When I left, we had policemen, almost 30-something. The highest we ever had. We have 9 now. So it's the things that we should do as black people, you know, to move forward and continue, because it's so bad when you have to fight your own. It don't make sense for you to have 3 people making $150,000 a year, and all 3 of them is Mexican, who are the black mayor and these deputies. Those things don't make sense. We have to look out for our own, because ain't nobody gonna look out for us but us. You know, and some of us ain't gonna look out for us, but I'll leave it that and let Mr. Ware.
Yes, I'm the oldest of 15 children. All 3 of these men has had an impact in my life, in my it's the little success that I've had in being a man, and my work ethic. Aside from my father, all 3 of these men have played a role in my life one way or the other. I always admired the Reverend Booker Guyden. We went to the same high school. For his ability to articulate, to public speaking, and to be an example of leadership. When we were in high school, he was our student body president at Edison High School and public speaker, renowned in the San Joaquin Valley. I always admired Ralph. Even when he came out to the fields, he worked a little bit, and he did a lot of other talking and working and doing what he did in the fields that inspired a young man like myself to be somewhat like him in terms of his personality and how to continue to be to go forward and being successful in what he was doing. And our police officer here, Mr. WILLBOND, was always as a police officer. I respected him tremendously. His part of, I think, Conway Homes and Moorfield, the city part was part of your route. And I can see that it was nice to see a black police officer in your neighborhood, and that knew the family and that could assist you in any troubles that you might have been having. A mentor to young men during that particular time. It's an honor to be on the stage with all 3 of these men, coming from where I have come from, the state of Arizona, cotton picker, onion cutter in the state of California, tomatoes, all the field work, which probably all of these men.
No, they ain't picking no cotton.
You and I.
You and I ain't pick cotton.
Okay, they didn't pick no cotton. Well, they missed something there.
Only cotton they ever picked about some cotton draws. They ain't pick no cotton.
But, and I guess, you know, again, all 3 of them played a very important role in my life as mentors. I learned something from each one of the men that are sitting up here that I'm on the stage with. And Reverend Guyden, I'm indebted to for all of my great love for theater arts. If it wasn't for this man, I don't know that I would have been in theater arts. A lot of you all know me from my direction of plays, staging plays in this city, African-American plays that tell our story. And I got that spirit and that bug from this man, Reverend Booker Guyden. I was in, I think, his first play that he directed at San Joaquin Delta College. And from that point on, I wanted to work with him in theater arts. And I had the opportunity to work with him, to assist him, and I've been directing theater ever since the 70s. I think it was 71, 72 that we did our first play. I was in the first, I think it was the first black play at Delta, and I was in that play. And so to this day, matter of fact, Stockton's only black theater company is Inner City Theater in the city of Stockton. And all of my theater experience, and the plays that you all have come to see, wherever we staged them, I got that spirit and that direction and that education and that motivation from the Reverend Booker Guyden. And so it's an honor. All three of these men, I remember Kenny perusing Conway homes in our communities as a police officer. It was an honor to see a black man coming into your neighborhood and a police officer being the law. It was just an honor. And Ralph, we have been knowing each other, and I was younger than Ralph, but admiring him, even in the onion fields and tomato fields, his spirit to work and his spirit even after knowing him in the community, the things that he did in the community. He was always carried himself as a professional, and when he became a city councilman, you couldn't be nothing but proud of the fact that he was a city councilman. He moved from the fields, from the agricultural industry to become a city councilman and a professional man in his own right. So it's an honor to be on stage with all three of these men and talk about our experience in Stockton. And what else can I say?
I'm so glad I lived long enough to be sitting here today. The man who really imprinted my life, loved every one of the persons who were sitting on this stage.
That's right.
That was my father.
That's right.
And I began to really be impacted by the love of my father because when I was in grammar school, we didn't always have lunch money. My daddy would get a second job just so he could show up before noon to make sure that we would get a chance to eat the school lunch. When my brother Martin was dying, he fed him, he bathed him, he clothed him. And so I said to my father, if I could just be 1/3 of the man or human being that you are, I will have felt that I've achieved something in life. He loved Deputy Chief WILLBOND because he was a symbol of us being in the hierarchy of the city. He loved Ralph Lee White because he knew he was real. There was nothing phony about it. He didn't try to be like other people, and he sure enough didn't try to be white.
That's right.
And that impacted me because when I got to be an instructor at the college, I was surrounded by bourgeois African Americans who sometimes didn't want to identify with Ralph Lee White. But even in the midst of my bourgeois black friends, I refused. And whenever he ran for something, if it was in my district, I voted for it, regardless of what others were saying.
That's right.
Because I realized that he would speak truth to power.
That's right.
I'm impacted by the young man sitting next to me because anybody who is a teacher of any worth loves to see their students excel and go way beyond what they have done. And Minister Ware has done that. I'm in the Methodist Church, but no Methodism can block out the love I have for Minister Muhammad, because beyond our religious affiliation, we are family.
Right.
We are brothers.
Right.
And we have struggled and we've been in the trenches together. I've been blessed to serve 9 years on the school board, 2 terms as board president, president of OIC, Leon Sullivan's organization. Watch Ralph go off to the Men's March in Washington and take my younger brother along with him. And thank God, if I couldn't be there, I'm glad Stevie was there at the March on Washington. And Ralph literally made it possible. He's a civil rights legend. And I don't care what anybody says. If I got a choice between somebody who's done nothing and Ralph, I'm gonna vote for Ralph. I'm reminded of the history of this city because one liberal white person, a woman, and a conservative Republican got together and then got some bourgeois black folks to go along with it. The only way they could stop Ralph from getting elected was to move to citywide voting. And then they want to grin in our face and say, it didn't have anything to do with Ralph. That's an unqualified lie. It had everything to do with Ralph, and it had everything to do with black folks being able to make decisions about who would lead them. And no matter how they dogged Ralph, we would still go to the polls and vote for him. So they changed the rules, just like Trump is trying to change the rules now.
That's right.
With no mail-in voting. Anytime you can't defeat African Americans, just change the rules. I thank God I lived long enough to witness my brothers here on stage. And I thank God they were part of my life experience.
Before I knew Booker back in the day, the men who amazed me was Reverend Fastine from Mount Zion Baptist Church in Boggs Track and Brother Williams. Wonderful, wonderful people. Reverend Fastine was as black as my shoes, but chiseled in crisp black suit all the time, spotless white shirt with a black tie, and was just a wonderful preacher. Brother Williams, a gentleman. And then I won't bring that up because, anyway. Well, I'll lead up to it. His son had passed away. I didn't know his son. So I go to the funeral because I loved Brother Williams. And so a lot of ne'er-do-wells saw me there, and they were sort of hiding and ducking and pointing. I said, hey, I'm here to pay my respect to a wonderful man. So I'm not here spying on anybody. Go inside, pay respect, sign the business book, and just forget that I'm even here. I'm here to pay my respect like you ought to be. So I remember that. But my mother was the biggest one for me, but I remember one last story, Brother Williams. I'm walking downtown for a while back, and they had this big bazaar down on the waterfront, and they got these, you got to buy these sausages up in the foothills. And so he's in line to get one of those sausages in a Pepsi Cola. So I see him, I said, Brother Williams, how's it going? And he said, hey, well, so we talk, gentle, nice voice, but he talk. Anyway, I said, you gonna get a hot dog? He said, yeah. I said, well, have a seat and I'll get it for you. He said, okay. I said, want a Pepsi? He said, Coke or whatever. He said, yeah. Largest, I'll get me a medium. Okay, I'm in a medium. So I got 2 hot dogs for me, one for him and a large Pepsi. So then we're talking, and it was getting late, but I was captivated by his presence. Just a wonderful gentleman. I heard every word. We must sit there for 3 hours. Brother Williams. Think about him all the time.
Well, my thing is not what others have done for me. My father died when I was 2 years old. I only got to see him one time. And I saw him, so I can't sit and say about a lot of fathers. And maybe that's one thing that inspired me to work hard to make sure that my people got their right place. That's why one is I admired WILLBOND. He raised up, went all the way from the onion fields all the way up to become the first and one of the first deputy chiefs in the state of California. Then I look at Mr. Ware sitting over here, and I watched him come from college to go to be in charge of a center itself, a toll center, down in one of the less black cities in the state of California, with Modesto. And he held that position for many years. It rose all up to that from the cotton fields in Arizona. Then I watched my other comrade from the onion fields and tomato fields. I said tomatoes instead of tomatoes. But Mr. Booker Guyden, Mr. Guyden rise all the way from those fields that we all come from, all the way up to become the appointing person for the Methodist Church. And every bishop that got ready to be appointed in the last, 15 years or better, all the bishops, and bishops is the highest position that you can get in the Methodist Church, and he became a point person to appoint different bishops. You didn't get to be a bishop unless you come through him. That's from Stockton. Bishops all in the western part of the United States had to go through him to become a bishop. He turned them down, and he didn't turn down many of them, you understand? From here in Stockton, from the onion fields to success in the religious field. Dynamic speaker, you can't find a better one in Stockton next to him, and Tommy's son. But excuse me, I didn't mean to put you down, but Tommy's son is a dynamic speaker too. It come from Tommy raising him the way he raised him. I take the back road. I'm happy that God blessed me with what he blessed me with. I don't anything that I have without praying on it, and I prayed for it, and God had blessed me with almost everything I ever asked for. So I have that, and that's the way I was able to get blacks appointed on the Port Commission. I had 2 blacks on the Port Commission, named 5 parks that black people could never get a park named after them. Reverend William Park, he's talking about, I named Reverend William Park on the airport where Reverend Hudson over in my district. I named Manny Harrell. I named Reverend Peterson. I named Gleason. All of that, and she's Spanish, but I made I was the one who made those parks that was named after local people, because we named parks after McKinley. McKinley was the president that never came to Stockton. All the different people had to have money. I bought some donated property, but black folks couldn't do that. But they donated so much of their time trying to bring about a change in our community. So that's why I named them after the different preachers in Mattie Hall, because she worked hard over there. That's the lady that worked hard in bringing about changes in the area over there where we have sidewalk curbs and gutters. That's so much that I could sit here and talk about, but to look up to someone, I have never found a person that I look up to, and I don't want anybody to look up to me, but we can all look at the same level. You're no more, no less than your own kind, and you will never reach no higher than the height of your own people. So never put nobody higher than that. Willie Brown's my daughter's godfather. He was the speaker, the longest sitting speaker in the state of California. Close friend of mine. Jesse Jackson's close friend of mine. I've been in Washington, D.C. many a times. I was there once with Martin Luther King, I was only about 18 years old then, is the Poor People's March on Washington. I went to that. That's prior to him getting killed. It was going to happen in a couple of 4 or 5 months, and I was there with Angela Davis, Sarkey Carmichael, you name them, here in Newton, all of them. There was a power of black people that you see even today that you read about. I was there with them to make about some type of a change. So that's why I adopted and brought back the Stockton, because Stockton is like, and it's still somewhat like Mississippi West, And so you just have to know your position and to open that all up, hey, you got it, I got it. You understand? So it's a lot of jealousy comes from how we arrive to a point, how than someone else, but I still live in South Stockton, own more land in the state of California than any black family, group of black people in the state of California, just to name a whole lot of other things that those other kind of folks have. We got it in South Stockton, and I still live there among my own people. I never will move from South Stockton. I don't care how much money. That's why I made some real nice neighborhood and real nice houses like Booker Guyden in South Stockton. So he never moved off of history over there where he lived at. I live on one end of H Street. He live on the other end of H Street. H Street is a hell of a street because it's got some dynamic people on it. The advice that I would give to any young man is the same as I give to any of those older men too right now. We can't send our kids to the street to do something we can't do. I think every father should be out there, every uncle or cousin that's old enough should be out there with them, bringing about the change, because they're fighting for our change as well, so as their brothers and sisters and grandkids coming up. If you watch Martin Luther King, he always had a whole lot of grown folks with him, but he had some of us 18 years old out there with him, so we wouldn't be out there acting a fool, doing crazy stuff that people want to use. Taking one man, you have to, our time has come. If we have to learn something about our history. And the baddest thing that I say and I tell, learn about who you are so you can be proud. Black folks was freed on the most important day in the world. First day of the first month, 1863. We were running around here trying to tell them to fight for June the 19th. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation in Florida, including Florida and Texas. And Texas was the last state to learn about their freedom. They was already free. And so we were around here being confused about our freedom and talking about that you got to learn your history and teach our kids. 3.5 million people was freed on January the 1st, 1863, like 2.5 million Hebrews that we call Jews. Jews is a religion, not a race of people. But, and we get that confused too. And that was 2.5 that Moses scared to the Red Sea. God had Abraham to free us just like he had Moses to take them to the Red Sea, and God freed the Hebrews. That's what I would say to all my people. Learn your history. Work from your history. The most important day in the world. 2 days that everybody know all over the world. Christmas and New Year's. There was a reason God had us freed with a man with a biblical name on January the 1st. There was a reason for it. Because it's in the Bible in Exodus 40, when God told Moses to set up his tabernacle, his tent of meeting on the first day of the first month. So that's our holiday, and we celebrating everybody else's holiday. You know, we celebrating Cinco de Mayo. Our kids know about it. The Passover, and then for the Hebrews, our kids know about it. The Irish, you don't have something red on. You don't have nothing green on. I'm gonna get a picture. Our kids know about it. We know about everybody's freedom, but we was in the most important day in the world is when we was freed from slavery. And we want to take the last set of slaves that got cheated. You know, it's like keeping a man in prison for 20 years and he was supposed to have been freed 20 years back. It's the same thing now. So that's what I would give my people is to learn about their freedom and teach your kids what God done for us in order for us to move and move together. The protesting they're doing right now, God told us about this years ago. If my people, which is called by my name, will humble themselves and and pray, turn from their wicked ways and seek my faith, then they will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. That's what's happening to us right now. And people don't realize it. Black lives matter all over the world now. You know why? Because over in Europe, blacks have the same problem. Over in Germany, blacks have the same problem. Over in Russia, blacks have the few that's in there have the same problem. So we have to look at, we said Black Lives Matter. They talking about in Stockton. They talking about what's happening in their countries too right now. All over in Syria. Black people, they're Africans, but Black Lives Matter. So we have to take advantage of what is righteously owed to us. Is we don't want Black Lives Matter. We want our lives. We are American. I was born in Texas, so I'm a Texan. Out of all the people running around hollering, I'm Africa, America, I know 50 states in the United States. And I don't know neither one of them that's Africa. You understand? So I'm not African American. I'm an American, but I just happen to be a Texas American. And we start messing with African America. It's like when the white woman up in Washington was talking about she was African American. Where did civilization begin, Rev? In Africa. Everybody is African American. That's in America, in African, Italian, or whatever. But since we're the only melting pot in the world that you have to be part of, you don't find no Negro German no Negro, African American in Italy. So we have to teach our kids and work with our kids. All of us have to get back out there to the street. Next time there's a protest for anything, they're fighting for us. They're fighting not only for themselves. We must get out back to the street.
After witnessing Brother Ford's murder on the streets of America, the first time in a long time that folks stood up. We remember Mickey Schwerner and Viola Luisa and folk who died along with Medgar Evers and was beaten as Fannie Lou Hamer was. It was the first time that we were shocked back into reality that the only way you're going to be free is you continue to fight for freedom. And so I would say that our young men coalesce with those who don't want to be like Trump and stand up and speak out as our brother, the congressman who was just buried, said, you got to do something. You got to do something. He had his skull fractured several times, beaten up, but he never stopped saying something and doing something. And so if we are ever going to really be free, we got to continue to stand up and join with those who will stand up. As I close, I'm so reminded of the president going to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where black folks were lynched and murdered because they were successful, because they had established a Black Wall Street. And we didn't hear much about that because the white folks in Tulsa didn't want it talked about. But Foreman was murdered in Minneapolis. And now we know the day, we know the time, and we know the people who were terrorists and went into the black community and murdered and lynched our people and now refuse to pay reparations for what they did. So we gotta just encourage them to stand up, or they too will be saying, I can't breathe.
That's right.
Can't breathe. And there's many ways to snuff out a life. And as Reverend Sharpton said, we're not gonna rest until they get their knee off our necks. And the men who sat on the stage this afternoon in various ways have spoke out against the injustices of this society. I never will forget going across Harding Way when I was a student at the University of Pacific, and the cops would pull me over as I was on my way to the library, and they'd say the same thing. We got a notice that there was a car looked like yours involved in a burglary. They didn't even change the lie. They just kept telling it over and over because black people were not supposed to be across Harding Way that time of night. It was a lynching. And I was, this is 2020, and we're still being lynched in broad daylight on film. When the white racists went to in Michigan to the courthouse with their automatic weaponry, Barr, the Attorney General, and the President didn't send any goons to rough them up. But when defenseless white folk in Portland decided to protest, they sent stormtroopers to beat them and to, Attorney Barr with his overfed self sit there talking about he doesn't know about racism. What he did was racism. When they can threaten a white woman governor with automatic weapons and you do nothing, and then you, some hippie-like white folks are protesting, you send an army. That's racism.
Well, one thing is when cabinet kneel down, they make the racists out of that. They try to make that race. Now everybody's kneeling down. But the point is, what we have to look at is when he not only kneeled down for that one thing, yeah, Du Bois was the one that used to be, one of them is a teacher, a principal or something here in Stockton now, raised a fist in Mexico. There was a big raise about that. About anything we do is racist, but now, and he was talking about and kept making this big thing out of the American flag, destroying the American flag. It was the white boy that took it to U.S. Supreme Court, and when they was burning flags, you remember when the hippies was burning flags, defecating on the flag, peeing on the flag didn't mean nothing, nobody was raising all that stuff. Now he act like the flag was something people was fighting for. We was fighting for American people, even without a flag. We wasn't fighting to protect the flag. We was fighting, when I went in the army, to protect our people. And
we don't want an apology for Kaepernick. We want him to get a job.
Not only a job, but get his, they should give him, you talking about, but one thing I have to respect Nike's for is Nike paid him the same price.
That's right.
He was making in San Francisco and brought him on over. So buying Nike shoes, I buy them any day in the month. You understand? And support Nikes for that, any shirts or whatever. So, but we have to look at the racism is dangerous. That's why I said a few minutes ago, California and Stockton is one of the most racist city, one of them, of a few in the state of California. Now, you have to stop and think something, and I give all y'all a prime example. You watch white people, they have rattlesnake as a pet. They have ants in their office as a pet. They have anything you can name, rats, and they call them hamsters as a pet. Spiders, and they call them tarantulas as a pet. The only thing they don't have a pet is a roach. And that's the level they put us at, the same level as a roach. Until we get up and stop letting people step on us and stand together. And you watch how racism works right now. Watch us. And I admire it right now. Watch the basketball players out there now. All of them almost half white and half black. And then you watch them bringing their young daughters to the basketball game in college and things. Honey, you better watch him. You know, in the football game, you better watch him. Better get him, he's gonna be a millionaire. Yeah. And we get, our poor girls are getting robbed and don't even know it. But it's not that we really want to do that. You understand? One thing is like Clarence Thomas is the most embarrassing thing to us, you know, to be married to a white woman, and he's more whiter and the blackest thing on the thing, and he's one of the blackest men in the United States, sitting up there voting on everything that's against us, and he come from what? Affirmative action program and against all of them. And that's an insult to us to even have him sitting on there and we support anything that he does. We have to start bring about a change. We're gonna have to go back to the street. How many, what did I say a few minutes ago? We pay the same taxes that everybody else. We're supposed to get, at least when I was on the council, you owe us 13% of every job. That means we should have 60-something policemen and we got 9. Where's our other jobs going? And all those policemen, like I said about WILLBOND, they make good money. Remember the firemen, $17,000, $18,000 a year retirement, a month, $17,000, $18,000. WILLBOND make over 20, I said 20, but $22,000 a month, you know, watching TV and playing golf. But we have the same thing with our fire department. Same thing with any department we have now. You don't see too many of us, but we pay the same taxes as everybody else. We got to go back and demand our fair share of our jobs in the housing, in the money that buy the lending institution that discriminate against us.